From the roots of the John Bales house, one of the oldest structures in North York, to the transformation of the Bales family's original farm into Earl Bales Park, the fourth largest park in Toronto, the Bales family has left an indelible mark on the landscape and community of North York. Beyond their tangible contributions, the Bales family stands out as the most politically active lineage in the history of North York. Join us to delve into the extraordinary journey of the Bales family over the past century and review the pioneering spirit of the family's predecessors and the active participation of future generations in community development. The first generation, John Bales and Elizabeth Scott. The famous John Bales house was named after John Bales, the first generation of the Bales family in Canada. He emigrated to York from Cumberland, England around 1819. He was employed as a gardener by John Beverley Robinson, Attorney General of Upper Canada. There, he met Elizabeth Scott, another English immigrant, who came to Canada in 1821. They were married in St. James Church on December 1, 1823 by the first Anglican Bishop of Upper Canada, John Strachan. Before long, following in the footsteps of early pioneers, the couple bought land, dedicated themselves to its cultivation, constructed a home, and raised their children. This marks the beginning of Bales' family story. John Bales purchased 60 acres on the western half of Lot 15 to 1 West, for £75. The sale was registered in September, 1824. They cleared a farm from the bush and built a house of logs around 1824, which was later stuccoed. They developed their property to include this house, a barn, and eventually established a very good farm with livestock and an orchard. John and his wife had 11 children. Later, John Bales and his wife Elizabeth moved to No. 1 Eglinton. They were members of the Methodist Church. John Bales House. Built in 1824, with its steep gabled roof, the Bales House is a fine example of early Ontario vernacular Georgian architectural style and is the only one of its type in North York. The symmetrical plan and elevation of the original two-story house are more reminiscent of the rural English cottages that Bales would have been familiar with, than of the typical North American log cabin. The John Bales house was built on a rubble stone foundation, the stones gathered from the cleared fields. The house is stunning in its simplicity, sitting low to the ground with its only ornamentation being the restrained brackets embellishing the restored chamfered posts of the L-shaped veranda in the southeast angle of the house and its rear wing. The house has 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, an oil furnace, and 3 basements. Around 1840, the family added a cool room for food storage and a 1.5-story kitchen wing to accommodate their growing family. At this time the entire building was covered with rough cast, coarse stucco, and the L-shaped veranda, supported by chamfered posts and decorative brackets, was constructed to shelter the south and east facades. A cool room to the north was documented for restoration before being demolished in 1991. The 2-story, 3-bay roughcast log house retains most of its original 12/12 and 8/4 fenestration. The 1.5-story rear wing has a variety of window types. All openings are finished with flat, beaded architraves and wooden sills. Other exterior features include the gable roof and 3 internal chimneys, a single chimney at the north end of the log house, and heavy double-flue chimneys at the south end of the log house and the east end of the rear wing. The older wing has yellow brick chimneys, and the newer one has red bricks. Looking around the house, the original hand pump that once drew water from Bales's farm well still stands in front of the house, serving as a poignant reminder of early farm life. On the south lawn, a small memorial pays homage to Second World War veterans. Behind the house, the wooded expanse stretching down to the river, offers sanctuary to majestic avian inhabitants, including American kestrels, adding a touch of natural splendor to the surroundings. The second generation, Joseph Bales. Joseph Bales, one of John Bales and Elizabeth's 11 children and a highly esteemed citizen of Toronto, was for many years engaged in agricultural pursuits in York County. He was born in York Township, County York, in 1829. Joseph Bales grew to manhood on the old farm, and began his business life in Whitchurch Township, County York, on Lot 24, Concession 2. He remained for 9 years before returning to the old homestead. In 1869, he purchased all the land of the family farm from his father, John Bales, and later sold it to Shetton Company in 1886. In 1885, Joseph bought a farm on Lot 15, Concession 1 East, for $9,000 and, in 1888, purchased half of Lot 14, Concession 1 East. The new farm extended east to Bayview Avenue and south to York Mills Road. He continued to farm these lands until 1902, when he retired from business and settled in Toronto. Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Bales were members of the Methodist Church. An episode, Elizabeth Powell. Elizabeth Powell, a sister of Joseph Bales and the seventh child of John Bales, was famous for her longevity. In 1936, Telegram reported that Elizabeth Powell would celebrate her 100th birthday on April 12. Mrs. Powell was proud of the fact that she had never been sick in her life. Several of Mrs. Powell's sisters lived until they were 90 years old. She was described as a very alert and happy old lady. She was interested in politics, gardening, and church work. 5 weeks after celebrating her 100th birthday, Mrs. Elizabeth Powell died calmly in her sleep in a house on Hillsdale Avenue East, where she lived with her daughter. The third generation, Oliver Douglas Bales and Joseph Christie Bales. After Joseph Bales bought the farm on the northeast corner of Yonge and Shepherd Street, his family moved from Yonge west to the political center of North York. His descendants actively participated in the political management of North York and served as school trustee, councillor, deputy Reeve, Ontario MPP, and provincial cabinet minister. Oliver Douglas Bales and Joseph Christie Bales, sons of Joseph Bales with his first wife, Rachel Christie, inherited the land from their father and settled in North York. Joseph Christie acquired Lot 15, Concession 1 East, and Oliver acquired Lot 14, Concession 1 East. On June 13, 1922, North York Township was established. They became the first members of Bales' family to get involved in local politics. Oliver served on the first council of the newly created Township of North York in 1922, as deputy Reeve. He was re-elected in 1923. When the first high school district was established in 1928, Oliver served as the trustee on its board. Joseph Christie Bales served as a councillor in 1927. This picture shows a barn raising bee on the site of Oliver Douglas Bales' farm, which Joseph Christie Bales sold to him in 1889, at the southeastern corner of Yonge and Shepherd. To support the growth and survival of the community, pioneer farmers all pitched in to help with such important tasks, which also served as major social occasions in North York during the 19th and early 20th centuries. These events typically occurred during summer and fall when new buildings were needed for the harvests. While the men worked, the women cooked and prepared the meals. When the framework was completed, all workers and spectators were fed at tables spread out on the farm's lawns. It was a tradition for the owner of the new barn to invite the community to a dance in the building before it was filled with crops and animals. These dances were the social highlights of the season, and they attracted people from miles around to dance and jig to music by local fiddlers. People came from as far away as Toronto and Thornhill to attend the Bales barn raising dance on Yonge Street. An episode, The Timbers of St. John's Anglican Church and LAUP's House. According to the book, 150 Years at St. John's York Mills by M. Audrey Graham, in 1845, when St. John's Anglican Church in York Mills decided to build the current stone church, Edward Pease bought the old wooden church and moved it to his farm, where its framework was used for another building. When the land was sold for subdivision in 1921, Mrs. Joseph Christie Bales, the owner, had the building dismantled and the beams stored. Bales' family has a close relationship with the church. As mentioned earlier, Elizabeth Powell told a Telegram reporter that she attended services in her girlhood at the St. John's Anglican Church and that some of her sisters were married there. In 1948, when the Bales family learned that the church was adding an addition, they donated the timbers of the original wooden church to be used in the ceiling of the narthex in the new chancel and chapel. Thus, the hand-hewn timbers from the first church, built in 1816, were incorporated into the new stone building. Mr. Pease, as an old man, provided the data on which a drawing of the church was based. LAUP's house is one of the oldest surviving residential buildings in North York. The house was built around 1834 by Elihu Pease, the father of Edward Pease, at the northeast corner of Young and Shepherd. In 1921, Joseph Christie Bales split the Elihu Pease house in half and moved the sections to different locations. The front part was moved to 34 Avondale Avenue, and the back part was moved to 17 Harrison Avenue. The front part of the house was later moved again to 20 Harrison Garden Boulevard in 2004 to make room for a commercial condo. Unfortunately, the back part of the house had already been demolished. The remaining front part of the Elihu Pease house has been converted for office use. The fourth generation, Robert Earl Bales and Dalton Arthur Bales. Robert Earl Bales was the son of Oliver Douglas and Margaret Laycock. In 1928, North York established the first township school area in Ontario. Robert Earl Bales served as a trustee of the North York Board of Education. In 1931 and 1932, Robert Earl Bales was elected as a North York councillor. In October 1933, North York faced financial difficulties and had to default on both principal and interest payments to their bondholders. In 1933, he was elected as deputy reeve, and in 1934, he became the youngest reeve of North York at the age of 38. He remained reeve until 1940, during which time he led the township out of its financial difficulties. Earl Bales and his council worked unceasingly to assist the needy and to lift the district out of financial hardship. By 1937, they had paid off the full contractual amounts of the bonds plus the accrued interest. By 1941, North York had paid all its debts, including accrued interest, becoming one of the few municipalities in Ontario to do so. During these years, Earl was also a member of the York County Council. In January 1947, he was appointed to North York's first planning board, where he served for 26 years, from 1947 to 1972, and was chairman for 17 of those years. As one of the founding fathers of North York, Earl helped the area transition from its rural roots to urban expansion during the post-World War II development boom. Robert Earl Bales and his wife are buried at St. John's Anglican Church in York Mills. Dalton Arthur Bales was the son of Joseph Christie Bales and Clara Christina Schmidt. Dalton Bales was born in Lansing, Ontario, on February 21, 1920. He joined the law firm of McLaughlin, Seward in 1946 while he was still a law student. He was called to the bar in 1949 and, in time, became a partner in the firm. He served on the North York Council from 1959 to 1962 and was elected to the Ontario Legislature in 1962, serving until 1975. In 1966, he became Minister of Labour and subsequently served as Minister of Municipal Affairs and Attorney General. He left politics in 1974 due to declining health to return to his legal practice. Dalton Bales died in 1979 at the age of 59 when he was struck by a car while attempting to cross Bayview Avenue. An episode, Joseph Allen Bales. Joseph Allen Bales was the twin brother of Robert Earl Bales. This photograph shows the house that Joseph Allen Bales bought at 317 Mill Street, Richmond Hill, in 1922. This solid yellow brick house, built in 1885 by a Mr. Good, faces east, overlooking the mill pond. It passed through 5 families before Joseph Allen Bales acquired it. Owners of the property following the Bales family. From 1887, the Shedden Company was the owner of the property. In 1922, Shedden Company sold the property to the York Downs Golf and Country Club Limited. At the time, it was one of only 2 prestigious golf courses in Old Toronto. The club operated a 27-hole golf course on the property and held its first official match in 1923, an exhibition involving Olympic gold medalist George S. Lyon. John Bales' house was converted into a residence for the greenskeeper. William Chinnery and his family, who moved into the house in 1923, helped design the course and became its first greenskeeper. The Bales barn was incorporated into the clubhouse. The club attracted golfers for more than 4 decades before the surrounding area began to undergo massive post-war redevelopment in the 1950s and 1960s. In 1968, the club's executive decided to sell the property to Max Tannenbaum of Pine Tree Developments for $6,400,000. Tannenbaum intended to build apartments and houses on the former course. After much debate and local protests under the banner of Save York Downs, the proposal was stopped. Ultimately, the Metropolitan Toronto and Region Conservation Authority purchased the property in 1972 for $9 million to use as parkland. The York Downs Golf and Country Club moved to 16th Avenue between Kennedy Road and Warden Avenue. An additional 25 hectares were added to the original Bales spread for the establishment of a public park. The park is named after John Bales's great-grandson, Robert Earl Bales, the youngest reeve to serve the township of North York. This reflects the Bales family's historical contributions to the area and their enduring impact on the region. Earl Bales Park was opened to the public on December 2, 1973, with one last round of golf on the 161-acre site. The official opening of the park took place on June 19, 1975, with Premier David Peterson and Earl Bales himself, along with his wife, in attendance. The protection of John Bales' house. The preservation of John Bales' house is guaranteed by a clause in the 1972 sale of the land that created Earl Bales Park. The sale was conditional on the house being recognized as a historical site. Although the Metropolitan Toronto and Region Conservation Authority purchased the property in 1972, the York Downs greenskeeper lived in the house until 1977. Starting in 1977, North York Parks Department foreman Gordon Andrews and his family moved into the house, and the city has been gradually restoring it to its original state. The Parks Department has enlarged and renovated John Bales' house several times in a modest manner to restore the building's original character. An authentic cedar shingle roof has replaced an ugly galvanized tin covering that was an eyesore for years. Repairs are carried out as needed. Deteriorating support posts for the veranda roof have been replaced, and decorative brackets that top the posts have been faithfully reproduced. The modern kitchen has been separated from its original fireplace and possibly a brick oven by a fiberboard wall that was erected to conceal these unwanted relics of the past. A one-story side wing was demolished in 1991. The Bales barn was demolished after the area became a park. Since 2015, the Russian-Canadian Cultural Heritage Foundation, led by Maria Blagovieshchinsky, has rented the house as a vibrant cultural center. Currently, the renovation of the house is in progress. Work started in 2022 and is expected to be completed by the end of 2024. Commemoration of the Bales family. Farmland near Yonge and Shepherd. On the farmland that Joseph Bales bought at the northeastern corner of Yonge and Shepherd Streets, a north-south street was named Bales Avenue to honor the family. Both sides of the short avenue are lined with commercial properties, and the north end of the avenue is occupied by commercial buildings. The area has been developed as part of the Avondale community. Over the past 25 years, it has evolved into a vibrant hub, with numerous condo developments, excellent restaurants, and a variety of cultural venues. Farmland near Bathurst and Shepherd. A plaque was installed in front of John Bales' house in 2015 to mark its significance to local history. It was unveiled on April 8, 2015, at Dublin Heights Elementary and Middle School, where grades 2 and 3 students learned about the history of the house, located just a few minutes from their school. Members of the North York Historical Society contributed to the plaque through fundraising and research. Dorothy Floyd, a great-great-grandchild of John Bales, attended the unveiling along with the president of the North York Historical Society, Glenn Bonetta, Councillor James Pasternak, school trustee Howard Kaplan, and Caitlin Wainwright, the director of programming at Heritage Toronto. On the original farmland that John Bales bought, a park was named after a member of the Bales family. At the Barry Zuckerman Amphitheatre, located in Earl Bales Park, some of the front and center seats bear signs that commemorate members of the Bales family. Welcome to Earl Bales Park. Immerse yourself in the rich history of this cherished green space and celebrate the vibrant multicultural tapestry of the community that surrounds it.